Thriving Together, Stories from CCEJ, a podcast from the California Conference for Equality and Justice. Our mission is to educate and empower youth and adults to lead change for equity and justice in our communities. I am Daniel Solis, your host. When I was 16 years old, I was able to leave the city and travel to an oasis of oak trees hidden in the San Bernardino Mountains. There I discovered a community of brave and passionate high school students and adult allies who wanted to create a better world. This community was Building Bridges Camp. In this episode, we're taking you behind the scenes of Building Bridges Camp, a space where young people come together to challenge biases, build relationships, and grow into changemakers. You'll hear from dedicated camp staff and volunteers as they share what first brought them to this work, the transformations they've witnessed in campers, and the moments that have deeply impacted them. We'll also discuss the challenges of creating brave spaces, the role of adult mentors, and our hopes for the future of the program. Let's listen.
My name is April. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I have been an adult staff at camp, and I started volunteering at camp in 2017, and I went to camps, I think, from the years 2017 to 2019.
That's awesome. So I'm Sarah. I am a CCJ staff person, and I do kind of the background logistics of camp. I have been involved with camp for over 20 years now, but in different iterations. Mm-hmm. So I went to a camp called Anytown in Oklahoma in 2004 when I was in high school, and then volunteered for the organization with camp for many years until I moved to California in 2019. So happy to continue camp in a different format.
My name is Chuck Barnes, and my pronouns are he, him, his, and my roles at camp have been all over the place. I've done most of them, not all of them, but most of them. Throughout the years, I've been a staff member. I've been a camp co-director. I've been an adult staff, which is what my role is at the next camp. I actually started as a camper in 1989-90 school year. So I started there, and then I went to the Air Force right after high school and came back 6 years later and started as a volunteer in 1998. So since then, I've been on and off. Mostly on, but there have been some stretches where I took a break and came back.
I'm really excited for this conversation because, there's so much experience and so many different experiences of camp, and so I'm really excited to dive in.
So on that note, I'd love to hear people's journeys and how they get to camp. So would love to hear, how did you personally get brought to camp? Or did you choose to go to camp? And what was your first impressions?
Yeah, so there was a teacher at Wilson High School in Long Beach, Mr. Mike Smith. And every year he would bring a group of students to camp. He was an older white guy, and he believed in this work so much that every year he insisted that he would go and bring a bunch of us. So he brought me. Yeah, and the reason I went was to meet girls. I didn't have any altruistic things in mind. I just wanted to meet girls and get away for the weekend. And I did, but that wasn't what kept me coming back.
I did not go there to meet a significant other, but I was I kind of wanted to go, but I was kind of chosen by my mom, or voluntold to go by my mom. She was very big in interfaith work in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so she had worked with the organization, which was OCCJ, Oklahoma Center for Community and Justice in Oklahoma, that put on the camp. And so she had me sign up for the summer to go to camp, and that camp was a week long. And through that, my first impressions were I was a super quiet kid, was very introverted, and that really helped me open up. It helped me really address kind of how I felt about my own racial identity of being bi-multiracial. And then it also gave me an opportunity to give education to other people about my background and my faith. So at the camp that I went to, we had religious presentations. So there was somebody from the Muslim community that would come do a speech, the Jewish community, Hindu community. So it was an opportunity to really be these people represent my community, and I get a chance to share that knowledge with folks. So first impressions, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But it truly changed my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I resonate with the transformative part, in it changing my life. So I went as, I didn't go as a young person. I'm really actually pretty bummed about that because I did go to Wilson High School as well here in Long Beach, but unfortunately I didn't hear about camp when I was there. I didn't know that the program existed, and I really, really wish that I did. But I heard about it as an adult. So I was at my grad program over here in Cal State Long Beach, It was formerly called the Social and Cultural Analysis of Education. Its name has now changed to something Equity, Education, and Social Justice, I believe is the new name. But there were some folks that worked at CCEJ that were also part of our program. And so they did like a presentation, talked about their work, and I was really intrigued. I really was excited to hear that this was an opportunity for young people to really step into their leadership roles and to really model an experience where young people and adults were authentically sharing power. And that was honestly what was so transformative for me, was to witness that, to experience that. And there was a lot of unlearning that I had to do for sure as a former educator, to unlearn some of, some inherent adultism. So it was a really transformative experience for me to really work alongside young folks and to really see that being modeled so beautifully and so authentically.
I love it. So while I went to go meet girls, it was actually, that was the topic that really got to me in that very first camp that I did. We talked about sexism, and we talked about the stereotypes that we had of each other, the boys and the girls. The girls had these cute lists of like, oh, the guys leave the toilet seat up, and all this, like really soft and kind of fun stereotypes. And then the guys were like brutal. We were brutal in our list that we made of the girls. And we had to come back and share those lists. So after the girls shared their list with us, we were like, uh-oh, we have to share our list, and it's not cool. You know what I mean? So it impacted the girls in our group, and in turn impacted us, because we were like, oh, this was not a competition. Like, it didn't have to go there, and we took it there. So we had to take ownership of what our list looked like, and it was really powerful for us, because it was the first time we realized we really impact people in our community. So it transformed us. It tore us apart at first, but then at the end, it brought us closer together.
Again, the transformations that young folks experience too up at camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'd love to hear, a little bit more of other transformations that maybe we've witnessed. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit in campers.
I would love to share. Yeah. So I think I've shared, I've been involved in some way with camp for 20 years now. And I often reflect on some of the earlier days. So I think one of the big transformations for a lot of the youth that I've worked with, whether it was in Oklahoma or here, is really about giving them the space to be heard. And when that happens, I feel like that's some of the first steps to transformation. So I distinctly remember there was one camper that was in my dialogue groups, just had a lot going on in their life, and needed someone to just listen to them. And there was multiple times where they did get activated in space because they never had been asked to share about themselves personally. They always were told what to do. And so what was really neat, after that whole week experience, we got really close. I was a counselor for them at camp. And a couple years later, they called me, and I didn't have their number saved. And they're like, I just want to let you know I got into culinary school. And that was, this person had everything against them, all the odds against them. And for them to, remember me, remember that I, listened to them, that was so transformative to me. And, thinking about my own leadership. And it's not about, yes, giving all the tools and things, but a lot of it has to do with listening. And I see that here in California with a lot of our youth. A lot of the confidence that they lack is because people haven't listened to them or heard their voice or given them the opportunity to share who they are personally. And that's what camp really does. And it's really transformative to see youth who may be really shy at the beginning of camp and at the end are the mayors of camp, the leaders of camp, because they've been given the opportunity to be themselves. And even if it's a 3-day camp or a whole week, that opportunity that we give for youth is super transformative. And it's transformative for me as a staff person to witness that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, it's so beautiful. The story you shared is so beautiful. Thinking about just all the transformation I feel I've witnessed too in campers and the camps that I've been to in the past. And I think where I saw it the most was in racial affinity groups. Just really getting to have an opportunity to speak on your experience and your racial identity, being able to name things, right? To have language to use. There's this really powerful activity, right, that we do, the speak out. And it's just, I remember when I got to witness young folks really do that and to own it. Wow, it was so powerful. And I just kept thinking what are they going to bring with them when they go back down, the mountain and into their communities, into their families, into their friend groups, right? It's transformative, so you can't really go back from that,
Yeah. There was one of my early camps as an adult staff member. There was a camper in the Latinx group. Her dad had been murdered by an African American man. So she had fear of African American men, and that came out in their racial group discussions. Well, one of the staff members from that group said, "Chuck, I think I need you to talk to this girl, because she's really fearful." And we ended up talking through conversation. She gained trust in me, only because I had to let her know, like, are you afraid of me? Because I have no intention of hurting you. We spoke. We built a relationship over the weekend. And then she was also from Wilson High School. I went to Wilson High School for a later event, and when I got there, she had a ring for me that said "Friends Forever," and I still wear it. Like, the words have faded off of it, but I still wear it. I have no idea where she is. It's impacted me tremendously. What are some other moments that have impacted you all from camp?
There's almost like too many to count.
Yeah.
I think like with every camp, there's always these impactful moments. There's these shining stars that happen. And if I think about recently, it's when I see campers. So as like a volunteer or a facilitator, I've seen campers within recent years really talk about camp being home to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the opportunity with CCEJ to go to a gender justice camp or a racial justice camp. And when young people look at camp, oh, this is my home, or they feel like, I know this space, I know the volunteers, and they've already created those connections, like that for me is like super impactful, which also kind of shows me that some of these youth are missing that in their own communities, and they're looking towards like CCJ, towards building bridges to create that community for them and to be leaders in that community. So that to me is a huge impact that we've made on youth, is that not only are they coming, but they want to keep returning. I mean, even to recently, we just had a camp application close, and we had people wanting to apply again who've applied and come. And I want to tell them, yes, come back. But I can't, because we got to give opportunity to other people. But I love the fact that people are wanting to come back. And even if they can't come to a camp, we have other opportunities for them engaging. So yeah, that's just really, really brilliant to see.
Yeah, so many moments that I think deeply impacted me when I was up at camp as an adult staff, as a facilitator, as a volunteer. I think I just want to re-highlight, because I think still the most impactful thing to me was like being able to witness, but also being able to experience authentically sharing power with young folks. And so, and like I said earlier, I had to do a lot of unlearning. So when I went up to camp, I was the teacher at the time. I was teaching elementary school, and I thought I was like, yeah, I'm all about sharing power with young people, yes, but I really didn't, right? Like I had to really sit with, I'm co-facilitating this group with youth, and like, how do I give space to make sure that, their voices are heard, their voices are centered, and I'm here to support, but it's not my show. I'm not teaching a lesson to this group. And so my first camp was a struggle, if I'm being real, because I had to sit with myself and really delve into some deep self-reflection of like, why is this hard for me? Why is it hard for me not to be like, all right, y'all, let's pay attention, right? It was like my inner teacher was coming out all over the place, and I was like, oh, what is going on? Yeah, so I think that first camp experience and really just sitting with my reflections and then taking it with me and then coming back to a second and a third and a fourth camp, I really got to like sit in it and really got to let go and got to see like young folks shine, and it was honestly beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is. I definitely see like that unlearning can be a challenge, and like with challenges, like for me, I've like tried to change the perspective of like that's an opportunity for growth, and like camp is always growing, it's always evolving. From like 89 is when you went, and I went in 2004 to 2017, and there are all those beautiful moments, those shiny moments, but there's also some challenges that may arise. So I'm curious to see like what challenges have you both like experienced, and how did you kind of navigate that?
The meat of our Building Bridges camp is this program or this activity that we do called Forced Choices, and it can be emotional for staff and campers and everyone that's involved with it. And there was a camper one time who was impacted deeply by what was happening in the exercise, and he walked out. So I went to go have a conversation with him about why he was walking out, because it's supposed to be a forced activity where you have to answer the questions and you have to be there participating to do it. So I went to have a conversation with him. He was pissed. He was saying, you know what, I just don't believe that people are being honest in there. I think they're full of it, basically. And so I shared with him that I think that I appreciate him saying that, but why are you hiding these emotions from everybody? You know, so I encouraged him to share what he's sharing with me, with the whole community. If you think they're full of it, say that. So he did that. And, oh man, it impacted him in such a way, so much, that he ended up coming back as a youth leader. Years later, he ended up running the program. He was the actual director of building bridges for a while. So I had taken a break and can't come back, and he invited me back.
Wow.
So he was actually there one time during Forced Choices. The same thing happened. Another camper walked out, and he walked out to have the conversation with the camper, and I had to go oversee like this is like deja vu for me. like it was like full circle. So, and I walked up to them. I said, this is the same thing he went through. I was here when he did what you did, to the camper. It was just so awesome, right? Like things come back around, But that was a challenge, but we met it,
Yeah. I'm just hearing that you all encouraged him to lean into that feeling
Mm-hmm.
and to share it vulnerably with others. I think that's so important, as opposed to just sitting in it by himself.
Yeah.
Right? Go tell people you're
And
frustrated.
then he was able to do the same thing.
And full circle moment.
Yeah, so awesome.
That's awesome. And thinking about a challenge that I faced one time at camp, I remember in one of my dialogue groups, it was similar after Forced Choices. We had a young person that was neurodivergent and was struggling with some of the perspective taking that I think happens in that activity and the reflection afterwards. And so when people were sharing, this person was just, I think needing, and they also expressed it, some time alone to process, because I think there was a lot happening and they were getting really activated by some of the things that folks were saying. And so I offered them to go outside. So we went outside and we talked for a very long time one-on-one. So I guess in saying that it was a challenge, I think what the challenge was that the other youth in that space, it was hard for them to give grace in that moment to that young person, navigating, needing to process in a different way. And so I think that was a challenge at first, was helping them approach with curiosity versus judgment or assumptions. And so having that young person one-on-one, and we were able to talk it through and helped them process a little bit more on their own. We were able to go back to the space and to kind of share some of the information with the folks in the group. But it was a struggle for community building at first, just because there was a misunderstanding and I think, again, a lack of curiosity. And so my co-facilitator and I had to really check in with each other and to create space for us to talk about that as a group. But in the end, they were able to see where each other was coming from and, again, realize that they weren't giving each other grace, I guess.
That really gets to the intent and impact, and being able to give space for conversations and grow together.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of challenges, it's hard for me now as someone who's doing behind the scenes logistics for CCJ, not to think about logistical stuff. but if I put myself back in a volunteer facilitator role, there have been challenges, and I think one of the challenges for me is wanting youth to have the same experience that I did, get things out of the camp experience that I did, have the joy, have the community, and participate to the fullest in dialogue groups and racial affinity groups. And in 1 year, I had a challenge of a camper that did not want to speak. They were extremely withdrawn, and we had a dialogue group, maybe of 7 people and 3 staff. They were there, they were present, but they weren't speaking, literally not speaking. So kind of strategize, how do we keep this person still engaged? How do we have them be part of the program? And I can tell they want to be there, but they weren't speaking. So we did different tools. We said, if we had a handout, people were filling out do you want me to read this for you, or do you want me to show the picture for you, trying to support them. And we did that for about a couple of days, because this was a week-long camp. And then there was a switch that happened. At the camp that I was doing in Oklahoma, they had a culture night where people got to celebrate their culture, give a presentation, and this person was the only representative from their group. And they gave this beautiful presentation. I was like, who is this person? Talking, being so proud of who they are, where they came from. And that next day in dialogue group, it was they were leading the space. Everyone was asking them questions, wanting to get to know them more. And I think for me, that really taught me patience, patience with like youth. They have their own process, their own journey. It felt like a challenge and a struggle at the beginning, but when they were given the stage to just be themselves and share their history, their family's history, their heritage, that was so meaningful to them, to where they just shined the rest of the time.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, we go up for 3 days, or like the camp that you did, Sarah, right? Was like a week long in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it's a long time, right? And so it makes sense that some challenges might come up, and it's beautiful to hear just the different ways in which like we navigated it, that young folks navigated it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm curious, just in general, what y'all think about the importance of adult role models and creating brave spaces for youth. So that camp is a place where that happens, where the adult staff really support in creating those spaces. They don't do it alone at all, right? They do it alongside mentors, youth leaders. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's important. Like I talk about Mr. Mike Smith, who brought me to camp, and how he thought it was so important that young kids of color specifically had a chance to have this space to talk about the things that we're feeling regarding racism and you know, and all, not just racism, but mainly racism at the time. It was important to me, especially from a white man, because he understood his privilege as a white person, and as an adult, he didn't let that get in the way of like allowing us to speak our minds and like be honest and share how, you know, we felt about these things. But it was important because we don't get those spaces very often in other places, you know, at school or anywhere really, especially youth. Youth don't get those opportunities very often to have safe spaces to talk freely, and they need more.
I think camp is like such a great like space to see those adult role models. When I think about adult role models and to create those brave spaces, I think adults being able to be vulnerable is something that can help youth connect. Like if I go up there and be like, these are all the things and you gotta follow them, there's no like changing up the schedule, you gotta stay on this topic, that topic, and not have that like empathy and emotion in it, then that kind of turns youth off. Like, but being vulnerable, I think, really helps create that brave space. Like asking questions or being able to say like, I don't have the answers, like let's find it out together. I think that really helps the space. And I think of like adult role models that I've had throughout my life, and a lot of them did come from camp, because there has been that community of asking questions, of creating space together, not just this is a space you're going to be in, but let's create it together. Yeah, adult role models are really important, and I also think like adults being willing to learn from youth too. So having like a youth like mentor menteeship with adults, but like not only am I gonna be guiding you, but I want you to guide me too.
Yeah, it's that part. Resonating so much with both of y'all are saying. I think what you just said, Zara, like the co-creating and that co-creation of space, I think is so important, that it's not just the adult role models or the adults that are doing the work or supporting the work, but it's also like, how are they intentionally stepping back and like really working alongside youth to co-create those spaces, right? I think that in itself creates a brave space, because it's like, oh, my voice is needed here, it's wanted here, and all those things. I think another thing I think about with, you know, just the role of like the adult staff in a space like camp is, just the deep listening that we can do, really creating space for young people to tell their story, to share their lived experiences, and for us to not try to fix things, not try to solve things for folks, or to give necessarily advice if it's not warranted, but just to listen and to be there to like witness their story, I think is really, really powerful too.
Yeah, I think in most spaces, adults are telling kids what to think and how to think, and like pointing them in what we think is the right direction. And I think it's different when you give youth the opportunity to discover things, to not be told what to think. You know, and also going back to the discovery thing, like there's this idea that if you teach someone something, it's an opportunity lost for them to discover the same thing. And I think that's an empowering thing when they can discover something on their own. You know, come up with the ideas instead of having ideas put onto them.
For sure.
So this 3-day experience of building bridges can be very impactful. But what would you all like youth to leave with at the end of those 3 days?
So many things. One of the things I really would like for campers to take away, and the campers are like in high school, and so it's a fun age, but also can be challenging. And one of the things I've seen, unfortunately, for our youth recently has been like the lack of confidence. The lack of confidence in like relationships and knowledge and being themselves and being part of community. Because our youth have like the last couple of years have gone through like COVID, where they've been segregated for a long time in their homes. I really would like for them to come away with confidence. And camp is really a space where we do kind of tackle that. Like, how do we build community and you can still be yourself without being told what to think, like how to act. Also the confidence in asking questions, because I think there are so many questions that are percolating, but there's a fear of like, if I ask this, am I going to look dumb? Am I going to look like I don't have the answers? Because there's this fear of like, I have to know everything. And then for the confidence of relationships, like our youth, like they yearn for connection, and our connection looks so different from when I went to camp. But how do we create a space for them to connect, and like how can they take that from like when we're quote unquote up the mountain, because camp is up the mountain, how do we have that confidence from camp like go into their schools? And we've seen that like grow over a weekend. We have like pre-post tests where the amount of confidence and leadership like shifts over the weekend, and again that weekend's only 3 days, which is pretty remarkable. But how do we continue to cultivate that? So I would say first and foremost, I would love to tackle the confidence and like these different categories for our youth.
I think the relationships is something that I hope they take away from the experience, is just feeling connected to a group of people, feeling like they belong, like genuinely belong to a group. I think that's something that I've been able to experience or see at camp, and my hope is that they walk away from camp, you know, knowing like, hey, I am connected to a community, even if I feel alone at my particular school site, or, you know, in the community I may be part of, I am connected to a community, and it's a really loving, powerful, brave community. And so I think that's a huge thing for me. And then also just knowing the power of their voice. I think there's so many different activities within camp that allow young folks to really cultivate and exercise their voice, whether it's in dialogue groups and having hard conversations, or it's speaking out in front of the entire camp, 100-something young people, right? Knowing the power of their voice and really using that moving forward is something I'd hope they take with them.
Absolutely. I used to think that I wanted campers to leave with this like sort of militant idea of like challenging every derogatory term they heard, or you know, this, that, and the other. What I've come to understand is that it's not necessarily about them going out in the world and being the word police. It's more about like them being able to feel more comfortable sharing when they're impacted by somebody's words. So like not saying, hey, you shouldn't say that, but hey, what you said hurt me, or what you said impacted me in some kind of way. So feeling more comfortable doing that, I think, is more powerful, because that can't be argued. Like how I feel about your words can't be argued, because my feelings are my own. We can debate about whether you should or shouldn't say certain words, but we can't debate my feelings. We're not going to debate my feelings. I'm not going to let you debate my feelings. Right. So I just want campers to leave feeling more comfortable expressing themselves and how they're impacted by all these topics that we talk about at camp.
I get asked all the time, like, what are my dreams for camp or for Building Bridges as a program? And the ultimate dream is that we don't have to have camp anymore, because all these like systems of oppression are eliminated, that we don't have to have youth talking about these things because they don't exist anymore. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And so when I look at Building Bridges, you know, we have 2 camps right now, racial justice and gender justice. Those are not the only 2 systems of oppression, unfortunately, in this nation and at this time. And so I look at like an interfaith camp or like a human dominance camp where you talk about like environmental justice. We even had somebody say we need to talk about a survivalist camp, because like stuff gets real. How do we survive when our internet's out? How do we cook our own food?
Classism camp.
There's so many dreams about that. And I think for me, like the future of the program is that like we still have the volunteers to do it. We still have the interest to do it. And if anything tells me now, with this upcoming camp we have in March 2025, is that there is a huge interest and so many people that want and need this work, not only adults but especially our youth that need this. So those are my dreams for the future, but I would love to know what you all dream about.
So Building Bridges came from another camp that started in the 1930s called Brotherhood Sisterhood Camp. It started as Brotherhood Camp, then it became Brotherhood Sisterhood Camp. That was also a week-long camp like Anytown. They were able to go deep. because you had time. You had 7 days to get deeper and deeper and deeper. What that camp did was it like, when we talked about a topic, whether it be immigration or classism or sexism or heterosexism, it tore us apart as a community, but it put us back together stronger than we were before we had the conversation. So by the end, after talking about all these different isms and things, we were so tight as a community that we had each other's backs across all of those different divides. I would love for us to get back to having that opportunity, because Brotherhood and Sisterhood Camp doesn't exist anymore. So I would love to have Building Bridges grow into a 7-day program again, the big brother of Building Bridges. I would like that to come back.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I just love that. More time, right? I think that's the thing up at camp, is it just never, even though there's a lot of time, there's never enough time, right? To really go deep. And by Sunday, you're like in it and you're ready to talk more, and it's like you're giving affirmations and you're saying goodbye and tears are flowing. You made these strong connections, right? But I can only imagine with like 4 more days what that would feel like, it's even intense. More, right? And that community you walk away with even more. I think another hope that I have for the program, I'd love to just explore what does it look like outside of camp to continue cultivating that strong-knit community, you know. I know we've CCJ in particular has explored lots of different ways to do that in the past. And so, yeah, what new things, right? What new ways of connecting are emerging right now that, young folks would like to explore, I think is a dream that I have. So it's beyond just the 3 days. How do you stay connected to this vibrant, loving, beautiful community?
Yeah.
Thank you for the conversation. I've loved connecting with you both. And so we can close out with, how can more adults support this work? What does it look like to continue supporting this work moving forward?
I hear a lot of times about people that have either done this camp before or they've seen us do camp and are interested. They don't know how to get involved. Yeah. We have a program called Building Bridges Leadership Academy that is an opportunity for folks who have either done camp as former campers or they're just members of the community that are interested in doing this work. They can spend a little time getting on board with the program that we have here and learning about the isms and how we address those isms.
I'd also share, when you're talking about people who've come to camp before, it's really just telling their stories. Like we're here doing today, we're doing a podcast on it. But I think sharing the impact that camp had on them, and also I would not just say adults but youth too, because youth are going to listen to other youth. Right. I mean, they can listen to adults to an extent, but if they listen to their fellow youth who share their stories of the impact camp had on them or the community that they experienced. But definitely would love to piggyback off Building Bridges Leadership Academy. So that's open to folks who are 18 and over. So we do have a lot of people that have come to camp before. We do have families that now volunteer together, which is really beautiful to see the generational impact that camp has had. And so with Building Bridges Leadership Academy, we really try to give people the tools to lead space for our youth and to kind of co-lead, co-create the spaces for youth to grow and for adults to learn too, because we're always learning. We're never on our end journey of learning.
Another way folks can help out is through donations, because CCEJ doesn't survive without money. I mean, every program out here costs money. Donating is a good way to support what we do. You can support at cacej.org. Whatever you can offer, that's great. If it's $1, if it's $10, if it's $100, $1,000, it's all good. We'll take it.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing getting to catch up with you, Chuck, and April. Also, we get to be at camp together soon.
Yeah, it's coming up.
So I will see you all in a couple weeks at camp at Pilgrim Pine.
Yeah.
Excited to
see you up the hill.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to Chuck, Sada, and April for sharing their camp experience and for all the work that goes into such a transformative program. If this conversation resonated with you, we invite you to support Building Bridges Camp, whether by volunteering, donating, or spreading the word about this program. Every effort helps us continue creating brave spaces for youth to thrive. Visit cacej.org/building-bridges to learn how you can get involved. CCJ's podcast is sponsored in part by LA vs. Hate, a coalition of partners led by the LA County Human Relations Commission who are committed to preventing and ending hate in our communities. Once again, I'm Daniel Solis, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to hear more stories of thriving together.